Welcome everybody to the Raw review on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Raw has not long finished over in America, and Raw was certainly raw this week. Get the words out at this early time of the morning. It was actually a really solid Raw as we build to SummerSlam next Saturday, which will be no doubt a great pay-per-view. Some highlights from Raw. Well, Dominic makes his choice, apparently. Punk and Drew's match is, well, official, but with a twist. Gunther and Priest, well, brawl for all, shall we say? It's another old WWE cliche. And Braun Breaker gets an opportunity at Sami Zayn one more time. Let's start with Braun Breaker, actually. Why not? It's a good start. Him and Ilya Dragunov had an unbelievable match on Raw. The winner of that match would go on to face Sami Zayn at SummerSlam next Saturday. And wow, I mean, it was, these are two guys from NXT that have come in and they have literally torn the place down. They're getting, I think the only concern with me at the moment with it is that Dragunov is losing too many matches right now because they've come with this big fanfare. Everyone was clamoring for Breaker and Dragunov to join the main roster. They did. Dragunov started okay, but he's been on a bit of a losing spell at the moment, and I'm not entirely sure if that's that momentum's going to drop. Remember, like we said before, with like the LA Knights and even the Joe Hendrys over in TNA, that you've got to capitalize on the opportunity that's presented in front of you. I think with Ilya Dragunov, they're not capitalizing on his potential. They're not capitalizing on him. And at some point, it could end up being a disaster, him coming to the main roster. And Triple H needs to work on that because he knows from NXT it used to be the dreaded call up. He used to be called up and you used to kind of think, well, that's their career over. And with Braun Breaker, it's okay. He's got it now and he's winning matches and he's getting title opportunities. But Ilya Dragunov is on the receiving end of a lot of these defeats. So they need to get that sorted out pretty quickly. This match was a brawl. It was such a great match, though. Braun Breaker did win it via referee stoppage. So maybe didn't hurt Dragunov too much. But loss after loss after loss can certainly damage the credibility of a wrestler. And it could be coming that way. But nevertheless, Breaker advances to SummerSlam. He can't lose this SummerSlam match. They need to switch the championships. Again, we talked about LA Knight, and we're saying that he's in a must win at SummerSlam as well because of, the popularity, and they should have pulled the trigger last year. And, he was never going to beat Roman, but at least give him a title. And now he's got the opportunity, a bit like Breaker. Breaker had the opportunity at Money in the Bank. He lost that match. He cannot afford to lose the match at SummerSlam. He needs to beat Sami Zayn. We need to crown a new Intercontinental Champion at SummerSlam because, again, credibility of a wrestler. You then start thinking, well, what was the point in him calling him up? And you can argue what was the point in calling Dragunov up to lose every match. So there is that kind of issue that they've got now that they need to start working on building up these wrestlers and building up the talent. So Braun Breaker, Sami Zayn at SummerSlam. For me, Breaker has to win. This was a great match, by the way, but they do need to start building Dragunov up as a contender and have him start winning some matches, in my humble opinion. Of course, maybe you guys share that opinion. Maybe you guys don't. You can drop it down in the comments on the video or drop it down in the comments on the post on X or Instagram or wherever you get our information from. Just drop it down and let me know what you think on the Dragunov Braun Breaker scenario. And does Braun Breaker need to win this match at SummerSlam for credibility purposes? That is going to be a question. Now, I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to start putting the questions back on X. And the first one is, the Braun Breaker need to win the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam? That's what I'm going to put as one of the questions on the X. So join us on X on Twitter. Get into that as we speak. Not as we speak, but get into that as I put the tables out there, and we'll get it on. I'll answer those questions on the SmackDown review, right? I think that's the best way to do it because the review shows are coming back and they're coming back with a vengeance, guys. If you don't like it, sorry, but it's happening. It's reliability. We hit these review shows all the time. We used to do it for show after show after show. That has kind of stopped. It's now starting again. So you'll be getting 7 review shows a week from the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast without fail. Anyway, let's move on. Now, another thing that happened on Raw, we had there was the Wyatt Sicks had 2 bits of stuff on Raw this week. They started with a video saying about Nikki Cross and how she was lost and how, she was betrayed and, and how does it make her feel? And she was doing all these weird smiles. And then she screamed at the end of the video, which was interesting, but maybe the Wyatt Sicks, whatever you call it, saved Nikki Cross from being betrayed, from being left on her own. But it wasn't the end of the Wyatt Sicks. We finally got a bit more than a video this week, which is what we said last week. We didn't want the whole bit to dry away and fade away. And if the videos were happening, they weren't doing a lot else, it could have, started swindling away. This week, something more happened. Chad Gable was in the ring after the Alpha Academy's match and lost to Karrion Kross's Final Testament. He come in and said, look, I want your help. You guys need to rejoin us and go against the Wyatt Sicks. Otis was very much, and when he says us, he means the Creed brothers. Otis was very much against what Sami Zayn was saying. Said basically, when the going got tough, you ran away last week and left the Creed brothers in there as to get beaten and whatnot. And that then turned into an attack on Otis. The Creed brothers were annihilating him. They were getting chairs to go for who knows what they were going to do with the 2 chairs that they picked up to do on Otis. The lights went out. They still had the chairs. You had Gable in the ring. You had the Creed brothers on the outside with the chairs waiting. The lights went out. The smoke filled. The music played. The door opened. The majority of the Wyatt Sicks come onto the aisleway. And just when you think that nothing's going to happen, behind Chad Gable was Uncle Howdy Bo Dallas, and he walked straight into him. He walked straight into Sister Abigail, and that got planted with that, and that's how that segment kind of ended. Looking like it's potentially could be a 6-man tag match between the two teams potentially. As I said, Ivy Nile was yet to kind of, join Chad. Will she? That's an interesting one. That's a question I'm going to pose. Will Ivy Nile join Chad Gable? His faction, shall we say? I'm writing these questions down as I'm thinking of them for you guys on X. Will Ivy Nile join the faction? You can drop it in the comments if you want. You can drop it on the comments on X or on anywhere else we post about this this podcast being up, because it'll be up very, very soon for you guys. So will Ivy Nile join the Wyatt Sicks, or will they then turn it into an 8-man and have Ivy Nile and Nikki Cross go as, what's happening with Alexa Bliss? Is she going to be returning to WWE soon? I know she's returning soon. She's had the video. She was doing her Twisted Bliss move and whatnot. So there was a lot there for them to. Well, there's a lot there for them to do. It's got a lot of legs. The story's got a lot of legs. The Wyatt Sicks has still got a lot of legs. They just need to make it, less about the videos. The videos are nice now. If they continue this sort of 1.5-minute video, but they do something on Raw, that at least makes it a bit more stomachable. And, we're not just looking at the same thing over and over again. So good to see that they changed it up this week. Hopefully a little bit more. And perhaps we will get a match made official for SummerSlam. Maybe as late as next Monday on Raw. We'll have to wait and see. Speaking of matches that could be made for SummerSlam, let's turn our attention to Sheamus and Pete Dunne. If you remember, they come back. They had a little brawl. Pete Dunne turned on Sheamus the other week after returning. Tyler Bate is unfortunately out of action for the foreseeable future with an injury, so we wish him well. This week on Raw was meant to be Bronson Reed versus Pete Dunne. Sheamus come out, and they just, all 3 of them, just brawled. But Sheamus has asked Pete Dunne if he's ready for another banger. I'm assuming this could be a SummerSlam. It could be next week on Raw. I don't know. But Sheamus and Pete Dunne could be going one-on-one in the very near future, which for me, I like that. I like the looks of that. I think that could well be a banger. These 2 are great. Pete Dunne, is he underrated in WWE? Is he underutilized in the WWE? There is an argument for that. There really is. And yeah, I think Pete Dunne could be underrated in the WWE, underutilized. He's far better than what he has had recently. Obviously, he had the Butch gimmick in the Brawling Brutes. He was working with Tyler Bate. We haven't seen the real bruiserweight in a while, and I think we need to see the return of the bruiserweight in the WWE. So I think Pete Dunne should be utilized more. The match with Sheamus, should it happen, should be great, and could be a SummerSlam match. It could be a Raw match. I don't know, but I think I'm all for a Sheamus Pete Dunne match. Could it be one of those? What did they call those matches they had? A good old fashioned Donnybrook. There you go. They could bring that back for a match. They could have them to a good old fashioned Donnybrook match. We'll see. But it looks like they're setting up a match between Sheamus and Pete Dunne. I'm all for that. That will be a banger. But I do wish that Pete Dunne would be utilized a bit more better than what he is. Sonya Deville picked up a win this week on Raw, which was very nice. It was nice to see Sonya back to in-ring action. A couple of the women had a match this week on Raw. Yeah, Sonya Deville obviously siding now with Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. So that is very interesting to see where that leads. Obviously, there's tag team matches that they're looking for. They're women's tag team champions. Yeah, what, Isla Dawn and Alba Fry. Um, and she picked up the win against Lyra Valkyria. So a really good week. Seeing Lyra's been on a roll recently. So it's quite interesting that Sonya picks up the win with a Devil's Advocate or Devil's Advocate, really, on Raw. And I think that was a really good one for them. We need to have more women's tag team. We keep mentioning about how our tag team division is slagging a little bit on Raw and or on wrestling because it really is. And we've had Bianca and Jade and people like that. But yeah, it has been quite all over wrestling. It's difficult when you're sort of looking at who could potentially challenge Alba and Isla. And yeah, I mean you got Casey, you got Katana Chance, Caden Carter. You've got an options now. At least Deville and Shayna and Zoe, you could have one of those three. There is more out there, but it's very sparse, and I think they need to work on that a little bit. The other match actually on Raw was Zoe Stark, women's match, sorry, on Raw was Zoe Stark, and she lost to Selena Vega. Again, Casey, Valkyria getting involved in that match. But Selena Vega picks up the code red to win that match. And yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. It's women's division at the moment is stacked, but it's I'm not sure. Like you look at Rhea and Liv, and we'll get to that in a minute because that's the match that's going to happen at SummerSlam, and there's probably going to be more to it than just that match. I don't think it's just going to be one match, if that makes sense. There's going to be a couple, and I'll get into the reasons why in a minute. But when you look at like who's potentially next for Liv or Rhea, I don't know. There's no one unless Tiffany Stratton, in my opinion, will not. Well, she won't cash in. She'll cash in on Bailey or Nia come SummerSlam, but I just don't see who really is next in line on Raw for the Women's Championship. They've not really sort of mentioned it because it's been embroiled with Judgment Day and bits and pieces like that. It's kind of been, I wouldn't say, well, yeah, forgotten to a degree because Liv's been sort of messing around with Dom. Rhea's only just come back. And the match at SummerSlam doesn't even feel like it's for the women's championship, if that makes sense. It just feels like it's more of a match with Dominic involved. And I'll get to my theory on that in a minute. But yeah, it's just really weird because the match with the women's title should mean something. And the women's title just seems to be put in the corner because it's more about the story around what's going on more than the championship. And that is where I'm all for storylines. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy storylines. I think storylines are a valuable piece of wrestling and they do help build the match. But to have the match for the championship that is built more around the story than around the gold, I don't particularly like that. That's not for me. I understand it, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure the match will be great. And as I said, my theory coming in a minute about it, but I just feel like the championship should mean more than the story. That's my view on that. But that match itself, we'll get to that. But yeah, I just feel like the women's title, both championships, the women's championship and the women's tag titles, are just a bit sort of left out there at the minute. And there's not a serious contender for any of them. Are going into SummerSlam? Well, serious contender going into SummerSlam, Rhea Ripley, but beyond that, and perhaps they should be building somebody up to be the next challenger, and they're not doing that at the minute for the women's championship. Could be wrong. Next week could be totally different. It's just feelings on this week. Let's just get to Gunther and Damian Priest. They had a segment where they were talking and they had a massive brawl on Raw. I do like this to a degree because although it's the first time they've got physical, and it's 2 weeks before SummerSlam, they're not doing too much in terms of having a Gunther and having a match and Priest having a match and them two just fighting out. So this was the first real brawl that they've had, which is good. They've kind of kept them apart physically for a while, which I've kind of enjoyed. That I do like the build when there's not a lot of actual fighting into it. There's more just not talking to a degree, but when you've only got a few weeks to build it, because obviously we knew Gunther was going to win. When he won King of the Ring, we knew he was going into SummerSlam and main eventing against the champion. What we didn't know at the time was who the champion was going to be. That was only at Money in the Bank just a couple of weeks ago that was officially confirmed, so to speak, that was going to be Damian Priest, Drew McIntyre unsuccessful, Seth Rollins unsuccessful due to CM Punk. More on that in a minute. But so because they've only had 3 weeks to build it, essentially, it's become a lot better for me because you don't need to have these big brawls every single week. They don't need to be in singles competition, tag competition against each other every week. It's nice to have that 3 weeks of just like, okay, Gunther. And I think even Gunther only come back last week, if I remember rightly. So it's been nice. It's been good to have, not just suffering about matches and Gunther pins the champion, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's been nice to build it that way. The brawl this week. Now, coincidentally, from that brawl, it has now been thinking that Finn is going to call out Gunther next week on Raw, which is the week before SummerSlam. So that makes sense because it's the week before the show. Finn Balor wants to soften Gunther up for Damian Priest. Now, I don't think Damian Priest has got a match. Still don't know the extent of that injury. We know, if you remember, at Money in the Bank, he had a really scary accident in the ring with his leg. So we don't know if they're keeping him away from in-ring action because of that as well. So we've got to take that into consideration. But Finn Balor is going to call out Gunther next week on Raw. I don't know if that match is official yet, but it's going to happen. Something's going to happen. So at least Gunther's going to have a match, a little warm-up match, perhaps ahead of the match with Damian Priest at SummerSlam. Gives Judgment Day a chance to soften up Gunther. Obviously, Kaiser out injured, so really interesting to see what they do there. But I like the build to this in the short weeks that it's had. It's been interesting. It's not been one-sided that you can say the Judgment Day thing has with Cody. But nevertheless, next week on Raw, Finn Balor calls out Gunther, so we should get a Finn Balor-Gunther match ahead of SummerSlam. Just a quick one on the main event before we get into the last two bits. Sami Zayn and Jey Uso did beat the Judgment Day of Finn Balor and JD McDonough, I believe, on Raw. That was stemming around, Rhea Ripley on Raw saying, don't pick a war with Jey Uso. He was messing around. She was, she's okay with Dominic. More on that in a minute. And, don't pick a war. They did. They went looking for him. They had to end up having a tag match. And Sami and Jey win the match. Braun Breaker did come out to finish Raw with a ginormous spear on Sami Zayn to end it. It was a really good, actually, tag team main event. These four are great in the ring. Feel as though Jey Uso is becoming slightly lost in the shuffle. Now, I don't know if that's done on purpose because perhaps with stuff with Roman beginning to kick off, perhaps they will do something on there. So perhaps he's being kind of deliberately lost in the shuffle, so to speak, so that he can just make that transition maybe back to SmackDown temporarily or something like that. How they bring him back with Roman and Jimmy, I don't know, but I feel as though they're purposely keeping him kind of away from a storyline as such. There's a little one at the moment with the Judgment Day, but I feel as if their attention's going to be turning or turned very, very soon. And again, we'll get into that. So yeah, I feel as if Jay's being left kind of just doing bits and pieces because soon they know what's going to happen. There's going to be another bloodline civil war, and it will be all over the place for Jey Uso. Once that happens, it might take a bit of convincing for him. Perhaps that's where they're looking at. I don't know. Will Sami Zayn even be involved in it by then? Who knows? But yeah, very much feel as if Jey Uso is being purposely left by the wayside because of what's to come. But they did win the tag match. Like I said, great tag match on there. Braun Breaker comes out and spears Sami Zayn to end Monday Night Raw. Now, let's talk Judgment Day. Let's talk Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio, Liv Morgan. Dominic kind of had to make a choice. Liv was very revealing, shall we say, this week in her short choice. Very short jeans, shorts, very cheeky. There you go. I think that pretty much says it all. They got called to the ring. Rhea and Dom were in the ring. Liv was in the sort of in the crowd area, and basically was saying to Dominic Mysterio, "You need to tell me those three words." She's telling them why that he doesn't go for people like Rhea. He goes for people that look like Liv. When she's wearing that sort of stuff, Jesus, I'm sure Dominic's eyes were turned. But she wanted Dominic to say the three words which she was hoping for, which was "I love you." And Dominic said, those three words. He said, like, "I hate you. You've ruined my life. You're trying to come in between me and mummy." And he basically blew her off. Liv Morgan was crying. She went backstage, cried. Rhea licked Dominic's face and planted a big kiss on his cheek and basically aligning himself with Mammy. But I don't think all is as it seems when it comes to that. So obviously, Rhea and Liv will go one-on-one at SummerSlam. I feel that Dominic is going to cost Rhea. I don't know if it's going to be intentionally. I think it will, because I think he will side with Liv. I think something like that's going to happen. Although Finn Balor is a little bit involved and embroiled in this as well, in a way. Because don't forget, if you go way, way back to when this originally started, when Liv gave Dominic the key to the hotel room, it was Finn Balor that took the key off the table. Just something to remember. Just something to remember because, with WWE at the minute, the good thing about it is you have to have eyes around you when things are going on. And one of the things if you've noticed, is that Finn Balor did take the key to Liv Morgan's hotel room. So could be something else happens here. My thing is, I think Dominic does cost Rhea the match. I think maybe he does side with Liv. Or something happens. The Judgment Day is going to start imploding, and they already kind of have. Rhea's a face, Damien's a face, the rest are heels. So something has to give there, and I think it will come SummerSlam for sure. Whether or not Finn maybe cost Damien the match, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But my opinion on that is Liv does retain over Rhea come SummerSlam. Indeed, it's just a matter of how she retains over Rhea Ripley, and I think Dominic and maybe Finn could have involvement in that. Last bit with Raw, CM Punk comes out on Raw, basically starts taping his wrists. He says he's medically clear. Drew McIntyre, get down here because I want my pound of flesh. McIntyre's music plays. He starts walking to the ring and stops, and he says, "You know what?" He was like, "Nah." Basically, he didn't want to do it. Punk's like, "Well, I do. I want to do it." And that brung out Adam Pearce, and Adam Pearce then says, "Look, what Drew hasn't told you is that Drew is reinstated, and what Drew hasn't told you is you're going one-on-one at SummerSlam." Punk was like, "Well, let's do it now. Let's do it now." He really wanted to go. And then Adam Pearce was like, "I've had so many problems now. I've had a Gunther problem. I've had a Priest problem. And now I've got a referee problem." And he couldn't get the word problem out before Seth Rollins' music had hit and he comes dancing his way to ringside that he normally does. And he basically said, "Well, I'm not a problem man. I'm a solutions guy. And I've got a solution." And he was like, "At SummerSlam, it's going to be Drew McIntyre, CM Punk one-on-one with a special guest referee, Seth freaking Rollins," which is exactly what I predicted last week on this show, I said that Seth Rollins would be the referee for the match, and it's exactly what is going to happen at SummerSlam. Things are boiling up very nicely on Monday Night Raw as we head towards SummerSlam next Saturday. One more Raw left before the big one next weekend. Really looking forward to SummerSlam. It's one of WWE's top pay-per-views of the year. I think, I don't know, next year's one is the last one of the one-night SummerSlams before it moves to two. Not a big fan of that either, but nevertheless, it is what it is. Good Raw, solid Raw, good build on the way to SummerSlam. Really looking forward to next week. What's going to happen with Liv Morgan? Punk and Drew cannot touch each other before SummerSlam, or the match is off. That was the other thing. What's going to happen with that? There's so much other bits and pieces. Will the Wyatt Sicks get their match at SummerSlam? What is going to happen? We will find out next week. But coming up on this show, Blue Meanie interview will be on. NWA Power will be here. We're going to be talking all things TNA. AEW Dynamite discussion will be back on Friday. The Rampage review will be back on Monday, as will Collision. Keep it locked in here. I'm heading off to Progress Wrestling on Sunday for the Devil on My Shoulder show. You can expect a review on that as well. Really looking forward to going down and seeing the team at Progress as usual. Thanks very much for having us, and we're proud partners of you guys. So we're looking forward to going to see that on Sunday as well. There'll be some more interviews coming up. There'll be a lot coming up on the channel. Just keep it locked at HTT Buckle on X, Twitter, and Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast on all other social media platforms. But this has been the Raw review on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. And until next time, everybody, buckle down and stay safe.